I would say that art that is religious art is art that functions in a religious way. That is, it's part of a ritual, it's part of a process, it's part of a prayer, it's part of the illustration of a religious building, you know, a church or a synagogue or something like that. Or it's a small sculpture that is like milagros or something that are assistants in prayer, for example. They don't really enter the art world. The only way they enter the art world, in my opinion, is when they become collectible to individuals that are interested in collecting those religious objects. Once they're collected, they're no longer religious objects unless they're collected by a believer. They are references to a religious object, they are references to a religious practice, but they're no longer a religious object. For example, if I buy a voodoo doll, okay, I'm not a practitioner of voodoo. My voodoo doll no longer functions, because I'm not a practitioner, as a voodoo doll. It is a reference now to other believers' use, or other practitioners of voodoo or Santeria or whatever, their use of that particular object. Once it hits my living room, it can be considered a homage. It can say all kinds of things about me, but it's no longer a religious object. It's a reference to that religious object and its function. And what it says about me is maybe I'm fascinated by that religion, or I like the form of the piece, or I like to include it in my own particular religious functions, but it no longer is the original. I don't think that it can be. Now, we have some shows, though, that you're usually going to find in anthropology museums or natural history museum. There was one of the greatest shows I've ever seen was a show on voodoo art. But it came from, and I don't remember where it came from, it didn't come from an art museum, though. It came from a cultural historical society or an anthropological, you know, place, part of UCLA, and fantastic show, totally very, very interesting, but, quote, not in the art world, because they're there. I mean, that is the history of artistic expression, basically. And we make judgments on it based upon our feeling about the symbolism or how well we thought it, or style. Actually, style is really the next thing. Like Giotto, for example, what everyone praises him for is a stylistic difference of taking us out of the Middle Age, you know, formula of representation, not the stories, you know, not how, you know, that kind of stuff, because that's stock and standard. People that argue about Michelangelo versus Raphael, it's based upon high art form stuff, you know, not what story was illustrated or whatever. People love Bosch because he's weird, you know. I mean, he's offered us a horrific image of hell, you know, that we haven't seen before, you know. So in a sense, it's kind of unique. So that's I don't know what your original question is, but that's why we study it, you know, to see how the expressions of any given age, how they are expressed artistically, you know, so if what you have is religion, that's what you're going to study, basically. I mean, the expression of religion. Now, I'm sure that a person teaching, you know, Renaissance art isn't going to want to show 500 Madonna and Childs. You know, we've kind of figured out which ones we think are significant, you know, and those are the ones we're going to show.